All right, interesting report there by Perpetua Fasome Peters. Business Edge, I believe, would be able to expand further on what this means, in for the Nigerian economy and, of course, also in the cement market. There seems to be a new crisis. I don't want to call it a crisis, but there seems to be well, I'll call it a crisis brewing in the cement market, with BUA and the Dangote cement. And I remember people are now even starting to mention Ibeto cement, and bring back the stories of what happened in the Obasanjo government, with Ibeto cement and Dangote cement, and how, one of them, somehow, some way, according to the allegations, backstabbed the other and then, was able to take over the whole market. Of course, Dangote Cement is currently, of course, the biggest cement dealer in Nigeria and I think in many other parts of Africa. So there seems to be something going on, but it will
Between
be
Dangote
easier
and
for...
Boa?
Yes, so I think that business forces are fighting each other. One of them, of course, is going to try to take more space, more share in the market.
Both of them are very
over time.
influential. Both of them are very big players in the manufacturing space.
Yeah.
There's really enough space in the sky for all the birds to fly. So
I agree.
I mean, we don't understand the mechanics of what's going on behind the scenes since we're not in the manufacturing space, and it would be great to have someone who's in manufacturing.
Absolutely.
To talk to us about the importance of this and what this means.
Absolutely, but it also shed some light on how expensive it is to build, to go into construction in Nigeria today. If a bag of cement is now 3,500 naira, and of course that's reduced. It was about 5,000 naira, I believe, before. It basically shed some light on how expensive it is, to get into the construction industry here in Nigeria. If you want to build a house, you must be really, really ready. All right, we have more conversations coming your way this morning, and we're, of course, going to be spreading our tentacles, from the business, part to politics, to, of course, what's going on with Chicago State University, where majority of the conversations online are still brewing. The Chicago State University, CSU, has finally released the academic records of President Bola Tinubu to his political opponent, Atiku Abubakar, in line with an order of the United States Court. Atiku, the presidential candidate of the opposition People's Democratic Party in Nigeria's February 25th election, had requested the documents to back his allegation of forgery of a CSU certificate against Bola Tinubu.
The university on Monday presented to Atiku's legal team a cache of documents connected to Mr. Tinubu's education at the institution and copies of certificates with redacted names issued to other persons about the same time the Nigerian president finished from the school in 1979. It also contained Mr. Tinubu's admission records and a letter dated 27 June 2022, confirming that he attended university from August 1977 and June 1979, majoring in accounting. The letter said Mr. Tinubu was awarded Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration with honors on 22nd June 1979.
And so there's a couple of things, that have been spotted while we wait for, our guests to join us. A couple of things have been spotted, as discrepancies with the documents, that were presented by the president's team. And of course, the one that is now being presented by Chicago State University that has been challenged, by the Atiku Abubakar legal team in the United States. And of course, it even starts from many people who are arguing that if this was being done by Nigerian courts, send a subpoena to a Nigerian university to bring forth documents, that would make or mar the chances of a governor, in fact, a local government chairman here in Nigeria. And, a lot of people say that they are certain that the Nigerian courts would not have been able to go as far as the United States courts are currently going, with Chicago State University. If you remember also, in 2015, I believe there were, major doubts as to the certificates of former President Muhammadu Buhari. You remember also how, similarly embarrassing it was that WAEC had to take a document to Aso Rock to go snap with the president. The Nigerian president was taking a picture with, a certificate that was brought to him by WAEC, which of course, was his, said to be his certificate from way back then. That's how embarrassing it was. But these are things that are being done to improve, and I will continue to say it, improve on the quality of persons who take on the mantle of leadership in Nigeria. But the standard dropped in my opinion, when we got ourselves to argue and Nigerians were boldly saying, even if it's NEPA certificate, bring it, we will vote for him. I remember that very well in 2014. And that basically opened the floodgates to people who didn't have proper school certificates, who didn't have, original certificates, who forged certificates, including the former finance minister, into, politics. Now we're having another round of, serious doubts as to the certifications of the current Nigerian president.
So it's not just about if he went to school or if he graduated from school. It's about there is a crime that has been committed here, and it's perjury.
Allegedly.
If that is confirmed, it will be perjury, lying under oath.
Yeah, there's that. But aside the perjury part, it's also going to be a stain on Chicago State University.
Yes.
To know whether they, were part of, whoever it is that allegedly falsified records. There's a part where, the courses that he claimed to have studied is different from the course that is on certificates. There's a part where the gender exactly, seems to be different. One person is female, another person is male. So the social security number allegedly also doesn't match with, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's social security number on the certificate. So there's all these things, that would be unraveled over time. Questions that were asked in the build-up to yesterday were, if there was nothing really to hide, if the certificate that was presented to INEC, was an original certificate and didn't have any, doubts whatsoever, then, the team shouldn't have gone through all those hurdles trying to block, Chicago State University from being subpoenaed or block Chicago State University from bringing out its original certificates from 1979. I remember a couple of weeks ago also, there were claims that Chicago State University, whether true or false, I'm not sure at this point, but, there were claims that they had deleted their 1979 yearbook from their website. And I did see, that if you scroll through the website that day, it goes all the way from 1970s, and below, all the way up, gets to 1978, and then skips and jumps to 1980. So there's many, 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 parts of this whole situation that will be unraveled in the next couple of days with the Chicago State University.
But it's just really an embarrassing situation that we're finding ourselves in as a country. And I really hope that we can get to the bottom of the truth. I hope that as a country, we're able to fight for the truth and find out what exactly it is, because it would, if not, it would forever remain an embarrassing, maybe not forever, but for a long time, it would remain an embarrassing stain on the country that we have a president that is, involved in, the allegations of this sort. I really do hope that we can have clarity as to what the true position is. We're joined by political strategist and public affairs analyst Demola Olarewaju. He'll be joining us to speak even further about the conversation. Okay.
Right. We're trying to get him to
connect with Demola shortly.
But let's also not forget the Supreme Court aspect, of this, because the tribunal, of course, has given its, rulings. And that was, of course, just in the same period that Atiku Abubakar was approaching the court in the United States. And so when the Supreme Court, of course, has to deliver its ruling, I think they have to submit these documents and submit, every information that they have between, I think, by the 4th of this month. And so the Supreme Court would also be, once again, all eyes on the Supreme Court. But it also depends on, because we're going to talk about these things and, see what the discrepancies really are. There's people who are arguing that, Chicago State University has released the document and, it, authenticates, what the president's team had presented initially. But there's also those who say, no, that's a total lie. So we'll talk about these things and then we'll see what the Supreme Court what will be expected from the Supreme Court. But if you look at what has happened in Enugu State, for example, where there was seemingly, allegedly outright forgery of a certificate, NYC certificate, and the courts said it didn't matter. It's not the only case that, I think there's some other case here also, that has happened where someone outrightly allegedly forged, certificate, but the court said it didn't matter, even if the Constitution says totally different. So
and that was and the issue there wasn't about whether, I think it was more of this person lied. This
Yes.
person lied under oath,
Yeah.
which is something that should have been considered.
There's all
but
of that,
wasn't.
and of
Anyway.
course, what the Constitution says concerning, the requirements for getting into office.
Let's now delving into this conversation the political strategist and public affairs analyst Demola Olarewaju. He's also an SA to former vice president and of course presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar. Good morning and welcome to the show. Good morning, Mr. Olarewaju. Are you here with us? Please unmute your device. It seems your device is muted. All right. And as you're unmuting your device, we'd like you to get into the conversation as to your thoughts concerning Chicago State University. It seems that there are lots of confusions. We don't seem to quite understand what this certificate is showing. There are mixed reports and mixed reactions, mixed interpretations of something that should otherwise be very clear. What exactly are the details of the Chicago State University certificate?
Hi, good morning. Good morning. I think the matters have been a bit convoluted, especially with some different angles that have been put out. But from what we do know, the documents released yesterday seem to prove incontrovertibly that what President Bola Tinubu submitted to INEC in 2002 ahead of the 2023 election appears to be not consistent with the records released yesterday by Chicago State University. Some analysts have pointed out otherwise, but in the specific requests that was made, especially request number 3, the lawyer to Chicago State University, Michael Hayes, made it clear that the CSU sample 011 and 012 are the ones that the Tinubu certificate should resemble, whereas they do not resemble that. Now, in all the certificate samples released yesterday by the Chicago State University, what you will notice is that over the years, their certificate formats have changed. Now, there was a point where what to look at for each of the certificates is the number of signatures, the type of logo. Let's even move away from the font and different styles. At some point, 5 people used to sign each diploma certificate. At some point, it was 3, and at some point, it was 2, which is the most recent innovation. Now, the Bola Tinubu certificate presented in 2023 carries 3 signatures. The question then is, at what point did he obtain that certificate from Chicago State University? If he obtained it in 1979, then it should have carried 5 signatures, but it carries only 3, which means that he possibly obtained it sometime around, let me not speculate about that, but it is not consistent with that. Also, more importantly, is what is missing from the document that was released yesterday. And what is missing is that document it doesn't show any document that Bola Ahmed Tinubu made any request for a reissue of certificates. That the only time that a consent form of release was signed for a certificate to be released was just this year to one Oluwole Afolabi. So there was no request at that time. So the question naturally is, when did he make that request, or where did he get his certificate from? I believe that the deposition, Atiku's lawyers are going to depose CSU today, and they will expose many things. And one of the questions I'm sure that they would ask is, when was a reissue certificate issued? Because it's not just about whether you attended or not. It's about where did you get the particular certificate you submitted to INEC in 2022. Let's not forget that as of 1998, when the gubernatorial elections were to hold, Bola Ahmed Tinubu told INEC that his certificate was destroyed when the military invaded his house. So the question now is, the certificate submitted to INEC in 2022, where did you get it from? Of course, there are other issues such as the transcript from Southwest College being indicated female. Okay, there's also the issue of his claim, the certificate which he used to enter Southwest College. He claimed to have been a student of Government College Lagos as at 1970. The problem with that claim is that as at 1970, there was no Government College Lagos. It was only established in 1974. So I think this opens up more troubles. But from what it appears to be to me, as a Nigerian, is that even if he attended that institution, I think that, the particular certificate that he submitted to INEC, that is the focus. That where did he get that certificate from? It may have been forged, looking at the inconsistencies of that particular certificate with other samples that were released yesterday by Chicago State University.
All right. I mean, from what you're describing now, there's so much, of it that will be unraveled, or would be, discussed. There's, of course, the disparity with the gender, of Bola Ahmed Tinubu from Chicago State University. Some documents show female, some show male. There's, of course, social security number that, doesn't necessarily represent, the current president, and a couple of other things. But I also want to ask about, those who say that Chicago State University may not necessarily be a victim here. They might also be a part of, the, perjury, a part of, whatever falsifications may, exist in this whole story. Is there a possibility that that is true?
Well, I mean, we would know that when the more important part of this process is the deposition, which is supposed to happen today. Okay, Atiku's lawyers are going to question the Chicago State University representatives. But one thing that we must note is that at some point during the hearing on this matter, Chicago State University they were specifically asked in open court if they can speak to the authenticity of the document presented by Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But the lawyer said that they can neither confirm nor deny that that certificate was reissued, was either issued or reissued by their institution. So they refuse to perjure themselves. What we do know is that, Chicago State University can make any claim, they can say anything. And that is why, the lawyers specifically asked for the statement. They want to clarify statements from two people. Number one is Jason Orr, who's an assistant general counsel on legal affairs of the university, and the statement of Caleb Westberg, who is the registrar of the university. They've also made some allegations. They've also made some positions on CSU previously. So they are going to be questioned. The extent to which, Chicago State University may have compromised itself in this entire process will also be revealed. But the focus, for Nigeria, on the implication for Nigeria, is simply that where did President Bola Ahmed Tinubu get the certificate that he presented to INEC in 2002 ahead of the 2023 elections? If Chicago State University says that we did not issue him this certificate, and you can trust that Atiku's lawyers will probably ask them to provide communication of when Tinubu requested for a reissue, ask them to provide for, because there's a $26 fee that you have to pay. Show us the receipt of him paying this money, at what point, in which year. And that is where the problem is going to come, because there are different formats of certificate for different years. If the format, which I suspect might be the issue, because the lawyer, Michael Hayes, specifically said that samples 11 and 12 are the ones that should bear resemblance to the certificate that Bola Tinubu presented. However, the logo of that is different. The signature number, which are supposed to be 2, not 3, is also different. So I think that's where the problem is going to come. So Chicago State University may be complicit in certain things, but what they are able to say on that record in order to avoid perjury, which would happen at the deposition today, I think that is the most important, that will be their most important statement, because they cannot lie under oath anyway. That would be tantamount to perjury, which is a 20-year offense in the United States. So what they say, which we may not know, but Atiku's lawyers will definitely know, since they will be the ones carrying out the deposition of the documents and of Chicago State University today. So we may not know it, but I'm sure that, we are looking forward to that deposition. We want to see what the answers are going to be.
We just have to wait for what Chicago State University has to say about this. But how very expectant are you that this would totally change the game concerning your case, concerning the case of your principal, at the Supreme Court? I know that this is an ongoing case, but how very positive are you that this will be a game changer in how the case is going?
I'm 100% positive. I'm 100% positive. And the reason is simple. Bola Tinubu in 1998 claimed that his certificate was missing. And suddenly in 2022, he claimed that here is the certificate. Now, the question is, where did you get this certificate from? That's the evidence that will be brought to, So I think, the people are, especially, a lot of commentators have already, said, oh, yes, he did attend. That's not the question. The question is, where did he get the certificate that he presented to INEC? Was it forged or was it issued by Chicago State University? If Chicago State University says yes, that it was issued by them, then they will have to show how that certificate is consistent with samples CSU 11 and 12 in the documents that they released yesterday. They would have to show how it is consistent with it. It is not consistent. Chicago State University might indict itself on that regard. They will also have to show when Bola Tinubu made a request to Chicago State University, paid the money that he should pay for a reissue of certificate and other things. They will also have to show that. If their answer is no, which I think it will be, or rather, if their answer is we can neither, confirm nor deny whether we issued this certificate, then the lawyers are going to press them and say, when did he apply for it, and so on and so forth. So I think Chicago State University is going to this is number 3, which you brought up. If you look at the last 3 lines, it specifically says CSU 0011 and 0012, that they match the format of the Tinubu replacement. The format of the Tinubu replacement does not match that. So that's where the problem is. That means what he presented. But of course, that argument, I expect that argument will be strong enough at the Supreme Court, but that's just one of it. As you've also pointed out, there's also the issue of the gender of the person who attended, which is indicated as female and married in the Southwest College, diploma certificate. But more interestingly is the fact that the documents that was used to gain admission to Southwest College claimed that he obtained GCE A-level 1970 from Government College Lagos, and Government College Lagos was not established as at then. So I think that this is a game changer. I think that, Atiku Abubakar, our principal, has fought, the dogged fight on behalf of democracy, and the evidence, if accepted by the Supreme Court, which I see no reason why it will not, because this is novel in the history of Nigeria. I think that, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu may have more explanation to do than he has ever done in his entire political life.
Yeah, but once again, if we've looked at what happened in Enugu State, for example, with the allegations of a forged NYC certificate, with the PDP governor, and of course the reaction of the court to that, a lot of people were shocked, that didn't matter, at the court. So it may, I'm sure there's, a handful of Nigerians who are also expecting that all of these wouldn't matter at the Supreme Court, regardless of whether the gender is different in Chicago, whether the social security number is different, whether, the certificates are outrightly, fake, all this wouldn't matter at the Supreme Court. So my question is, what happens next, if the Supreme Court goes ahead to affirm, that these things don't matter and President Bola Tinubu remains duly elected? What happens next, and how do you think that might affect Nigeria's democracy, Nigeria's electoral process, and all of that going forward?
Well, I think the biggest casualty in this instance will be Nigeria's image in the global community. Already, this is a public matter in which American media is also interested because it concerns the Nigerian president and also the integrity of one of their institutions, Chicago State University. So with the Peter Mba matter, we're dealing with Nigerian institutions. We're dealing with a Nigerian organization, the NYSC, and other related bodies. In this particular issue, it is an international matter on which the judiciary in the US has taken an active interest and has made a pronouncement that this record should be released, the position should be carried out. So also note, in the Peter Mba matter, NYSC, said that, they had no records and so on, and then Peter Mba also sued the NYSC. If Bola Ahmed Tinubu goes ahead to sue Chicago State University, then we may say, okay, maybe he has a case. Okay, but suing Chicago State University on its own might open a different can of worms, especially concerning, certificates that he tendered, such as Southwest College and so on and so forth. So Peter Mba's block was that he sued them and said, so there was that pending matter, and the judgment in Nigeria had to sidestep that and say, there's a back and forth here. Other bodies in Nigeria, other agencies, security agencies in Nigeria came in and intervened and said, look, this certificate, we can authenticate that it is from NYSC and so on and so forth. With the United States, such things do not happen. It comes out very clear. Chicago State University has to say, did you certify this record? Did you issue this particular certificate or not? If they answer that question in the negative,
so for you, the greatest damage here.
Judiciary,
I apologize, but are you saying that the greatest damage here is the international disgrace that comes from all of this? Or the damage that this might do to Nigeria's democracy and the belief in Nigeria's judiciary and the belief in Nigeria's electoral process generally? Which for you is a bigger, stain going forward if the Supreme Court affirms it?
Ordinarily, I would say that the dangers to the democratic process is the biggest damage. Unfortunately, we've seen judgment after judgment after judgment that have been consistently disappointing, and they have sort of robbed the electoral jurisprudence in Nigeria. We've talked about before, the Pepsi ruling that, made a mockery of the digital innovations and said that INEC can approbate and reprobate, can make laws and break its own laws when it comes to the conduct of elections. We've seen that has already brought low the standard. Recently, just last week, in Ogun State, as one of the tribunals, based on the use of the word purportedly, an entire electoral petition was thrown out, and we've seen that. Yesterday in Nasarawa, we saw the jubilation that followed the tribunal judgment. So there have been those instances where people feel that the judiciary has performed well or not. So that is on one side. But in this particular matter, it's a matter that has international ramifications. There's the global dimension to it. Whatever nonsense that we do in Nigeria, is about to be exposed on a global stage. And I think, that may be the greatest thing that ties the hand of the Supreme Court in Nigeria. They have to be very careful. We would want to see the reasons, if this is going to be dismissed. But I think that, the strength of the Supreme Court is something that we are not looking at yet, which is that the moment the Supreme Court makes a pronouncement, whether that pronouncement is, whether you agree with it or not, everyone has to comply. It is the final bus stop. Okay, so if they say that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not validly elected as president, there is nothing that he can do. From the moment that pronouncement is made, all powers of that office is lost. So there's usually more courage at the Supreme Court. There's usually a greater sense of bravery at the Supreme Court, and that's why I have confidence that the Supreme Court is going to save Nigeria from this international embarrassment of the president presenting forged certificates to INEC. So I think, the biggest is it's a mix of everything. It's a mix of everything. It's the confidence in the judiciary, it's the processes within our democracy, and it's also the international embarrassment dimension to this matter.
Well, maybe we'll just have to hold on to hear from Chicago State University and see what the next steps are. And of course, like we like to say, innocent until proven guilty. Thank you, Demola Olarewaju, for joining us this morning.